A couple of my cousins growing up, some of the girls were, kind of mannish. Some of the boys were a little feminine.
And whose team is this? Is this your team? Or is this your daddy's team?
Thanks for listening to Dad Mode Podcast. Common sense parenting in a politically correct world. Here's your host, Andy Carlson.
Welcome back to the Dad Mode Podcast, Common Sense Parenting in a Politically Correct World. I'm your host, Andy Carlson, at Andy Carlson Show on Twitter. I'm a father, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but you don't either there, Chiefy, so let's try and learn something together today. The website is dadmodepod.com, Twitter at dadmodepod, or just use the hashtag dadmode. And today, talking about tomboys, tomgirls, two hearts beating wildly. Now, I'm not a country fan, except for some reason I know a lot of country songs from like the late 90s, but that's besides the point. I'm talking about tomboys and tomgirls, a.k.a. going against traditional gender roles, and there's so much politically correctness nowadays as you're a man who identifies as a woman now, and yada, yada, yada. So we'll talk about that from a dad's perspective, especially as a father of a young daughter. And, does she want to be a tomboy? That's fine. Does she want to be a girly girl? Quote, unquote, girly girl, because you can't even say that nowadays. We'll get into all that. Nick Kasson is not with me today because, as many of you may have put together from Twitter, Nick died. Nah, I'm just kidding. He's fine. Schedules clashing. It's very heavy on the football season as weekends are, really chewed up. As I'm a big purveyor of Purple for the One podcast. Nick is busy with his own stuff too, and sometimes we just don't mesh up. Sometimes we don't meet, but I promise we will get together and hash out some major dad mode pods in the near future, or I'll fire Nick. One of the two. I don't know yet. I haven't really decided what I really want to do, but the tomboy, tomgirl thing, and I always go back to growing up, and I'm from a small town, Rushford, Minnesota. Go RP Trojans, yada yada, and it was a town of about 2,000 people, and I want to say it's conservative, but not like overly conservative. Like there was, some gay kids, there were some tomboys, as in girls who were very masculine in how they acted, very good at sports, basketball, softball, golf, those sort of things. The traditional sort of stereotypes, as it were, and it was never, it was never a big thing. It was fairly accepted. It may be like an eyebrow raise here and there, but overall, it wasn't like they were shunned or their families were threatened or anything like that. But I want to say overall, relatively conservative, but not over the top. So I grew up with, a couple of boys who acted very feminine, turned out to be gay in their adult life. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's, contrary to some small town conservative thinking it's not a choice. It is how they're born. And that's what I believe. That's what my wife believes, and if our daughter, little Muggsy, is a lesbian, is attracted to other females as an adult, I mean that's perfectly fine. We're not going to be like the parents who turn their back and like, you are living in sin. We cast thee out. Even though we do consider ourselves Christians, and it's sort of the weird thing where you're trying to play it both ways, and I don't know. Who really knows nowadays? So I did grow up with that, and a couple of my cousins growing up, some of the girls were kind of mannish. Some of the boys were a little feminine, and I never thought too much of that. But with the daughter now, and of course I'm the dad. I'm the big sports guy. I'm not really big into hunting. I'm kind of okay with fishing, but overall, I'm not like overly into like the traditional masculine things like that. Like not riding snowmobiles or four-wheelers or anything like that. I do love home improvement, so maybe some carpentry and some electrical work is like the most masculine butch thing that I can get Muggsy into as far as my interests and hobbies. But you know, if she wants to, play sports and wear her hair short and wear a pigtail and not wear dresses and always wearing sweats and hoodies all the way up through high school, I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm not going to be the one who pushes like being feminine onto her, and I don't think the wife is either. We're very kind of, as long as you're doing your work and being a good person, being polite, and I mean that's really all that we can ask. As long as you're not infringing on other people's pursuit of happiness, you do you, kid. And that I kind of had a moment where we were getting all these clothes from hand-me-downs, from the baby showers, etc., where everything was pink. Everything was pink for a little girl, and it's just like, Do I want my daughter to grow up to be Hillary from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or more like Ashley from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Now that's the question. Because if you remember the show, great show by the way, Hillary was the very hoity-toity, high-maintenance female, whereas Ashley was a little bit more of a rough-and-tumble, rough rider who became, very beautiful in her own right towards the end of the show, but was very much more the tomboy of the Banks daughters. Now, I would prefer if she was more like the Ashley. I think the Ashley is much more worldly and has a much better sense of self-awareness rather than the Hillary. And that's why I was getting concerned about all the pink coming in, because pink everything, and then the tea sets, and then the "Daddy, can I have $20" sort of thing coming down the pipeline. I'm just like, is it really nature versus nurture? If we dress her all in pink and give her everything that she wants up until age 5, will she really turn into a Hillary? Or if it's in the DNA, the double helix, to be more of independent, more rough and tumble, more of a quote-unquote tomboy, will Muggsy take after that? Now, I've kind of reached a sort of a balance. Like, we dress her up in a lot of sports gear, a lot of Vikings, a lot of Wild, a lot of Twin stuff. Even though she's wearing a Hawkeyes hoodie today, for some reason, because the wife, well, full disclosure, I'm a huge college football fan, except I never really had a team growing up because the Gophers were absolutely terrible when I was growing up. Glenn Mason brought him back with a little bit of, brought him back into relevancy a little bit with, the Lawrence Maroney, Marion the Barbarian Barber III, Assad Abdul Khalik. Yeah, those years. But I was already past my formative years, and it's hard to jump back in now. I'm trying to. I really like what Jerry Kill is doing, but Mitch Leidner effing sucks. Mitch Leidner, I know we're supposed to love hashtag one of us. I think he's from Lakeville, which is very close to where we live now, and he's terrible. He's terrible. They just got shut out at Northwestern, and it's time to move on. It's time to move on to the Croft kid, and let's go. But we're quasi Gopher fans, and we got a hand-me-down Iowa Hawkeyes hoodie. They just got a big win in Madison over the Badgers, and are 5-0. And she dressed the kid up like that, and she's basically just like, Leidner sucks. Let's cheer for the Hawkeyes because they're winning. It's kind of funny, and we could kind of explain it away because we lived in Iowa for 3 years. So it was like, maybe, who knows? Where was I? That's how it usually goes. But we do have a lot of the pink gear, a lot of mittens, a lot of socks, a lot of blankets, and I think she really looks cute dressed up in pink. I'm not gonna lie. Especially we have this like little pink onesie with the feeties and also with like a little animal hood. I think it's a monkey, but it's all pink. It's just so freaking cute. So we're trying to strike a balance between going overly pink and then also dressing her up in sports stuff all the time, because hypothetically, say if I was a single dad, I would probably lean towards all sports stuff. And Muggsy, if you go with the nurture route, probably would skew more towards the tomboy. Wearing jeans to formal functions, maybe, playing sports all day, not worrying about how your hair looks, or never putting on makeup, never worrying about boys and things like that. But, with the wife here, and I'm really glad that she's here because I'd rather not go into conversations that say a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl would have, and you know what I mean. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And then when you get into sort of the teenage years, when they're biologically starting to get interested in boys, how do you explain to a girl how much eyeshadow to wear? How much perfume or body spray is too much? How do you flirt? How do you know if a boy's like you? I don't want to have those conversations. That's why I'm so glad that the wife is here. And if say Muggsy is more of the tomboy type, even with both of the parents here, if she is a heterosexual and she isn't homosexual, I mean, it might be conversation time, because I feel like even through high school and college and then through the early 20s sort of era, like how you interact with your chosen sexual partner demographic, really affects your self-esteem. How you feel about yourself, how you carry yourself, and if you have high self-esteem, you're generally going to take better care of yourself, both health and both physically and mentally, and will help you get ahead in your career, in your job, in your professional relationships, in your social relationships, etc. And if you're just a straight up tomboy who's about 250 pounds, has a butch haircut, and eating chicken wings with the guys, and you're still interested in guys, maybe not the best path to find a mate. Now, what is the parents' role in that? Like, if the parents could see that coming down the pipeline at, say, like age 14, is it their job to be like, well, daughter X, if you want to attract the boys, maybe stop doing this or start doing X, Y, Z. Is that really their spot? Or because they're looking out for their kids, they're worried about their long-term happiness, for lack of a better term, for the reasons that we talked about, as, if you do have a good relationship with the opposite sex or the group that you are interested in sexually, your life is just going to be so much better. And it's a really awkward conversation. I'm really grasping to find the words to talk about it now, but, if it's like if you have a son, and we'll skew over to the tomboy, tomgirl sort of thing. But if you have a son who's, playing very much into the girls and playing video games 16 hours a day in your basement, eating nothing but pizza rolls, and is about 305 with bad skin and zero social skills, as a parent, if that kid's 15 years old, do you want to let him just do him because he seems happy, but maybe he's not happy overall? Or do you want to steer him in a direction that will, help his life, maybe help him interact more with the opposite sex, which long term is going to make his life better? Because, let's be honest, if you never get laid in your entire life, you're going to have a bad time, all right? And then swinging all the way over to the other side of the coin, say you have a son, and he's into things that are traditionally feminine. He loves the color pink. He likes playing with dolls, likes dressing up as a female. What is your role as a parent to either, let him do him? Maybe eventually he identifies as a woman, as is the topic du jour nowadays. Maybe he's into other men. And, what is the parent's role in trying to steer them towards a traditional gender role? Or is it their job at all? Or is it extremely laissez-faire, anything goes sort of thing? Now, this is going to be kind of tough for me since I currently don't have a son. We currently have some friends with sons, and some of the sons are into playing with dolls, wearing pink, etc. And I feel like at the stage they're very much in the formative years. It's sort of like anything goes, between 1 or 2 years old. But if the kid ends up being like 7, 8 years old, still loves doing everything that girls traditionally do, and then it might be time to have the sort of conversation. Now, I'm not advocating forcing the kid to wear nothing but denim and Doc Martens and make him play tackle football, even though he cries every time you're driving him to practice. I'm not talking about that. But maybe it's time to sort of steer him, or steer's a bad word, introduce him to some more traditionally masculine things, because maybe he wasn't introduced to them. Maybe he will take a liking to hunting, fishing, driving go-karts, etc. And I'm not saying that if you're raising your son, and is it the actual parent's job to steer them into traditional gender roles as boys and girls, or are we at the point now where it is kind of a whatevs, let's just roll the dice and let the kid decide on their own sort of thing? Now, in the 50s and 60s, it'd be very clear. If the boy is a little effeminate, you take him hunting, you give him a 6-pack of Schlitz, and if he's still a little feminine after that, then you beat him with your belt. That's how it was done in the 50s and 60s. And if your daughter is a little butch, you just send her off to charm school, and if that doesn't work, then you send her to the aunt and uncles, down south. Or I don't really know what they did in the 50s, but I'm kind of more inclined to let the kids be them to an extent. Like introduce them to many different things that are traditional to their gender roles. With the female, it's going to be dolls, dresses, cooking. I don't want to say housework because I can get in trouble with that. And with the boys, it will be the sports and that's really about all that men do. Maybe construction, stuff like that. And because even if they don't take to it, like even if Muggsy is very heavy into sports and very masculine things and is quote unquote a little butch or a little tomboy, that's perfectly fine. I mean, as long as she's happy, that's all that I care about. And I am really happy that in this world of politically correctness, I'm kind of happy that the gender lines have blurred to an extent. Now, I don't really care for I identify as a female, so I must use the female's restroom. Ain't nobody got time for that. But I do like that the roles are less rigid, and there is more blurring of the lines. As the stay-at-home dad is more prevalent, the working mom is more prevalent, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of my take on tomboys, tomgirls, and if we have a son down the line, and if he's if he's effeminate, that's fine. I don't really care. I mean, if he's a full-blown homosexual and is very flamboyant about it, that's fine too. Just love your kids, love your sons, and then I will be very happy when he marries another man, and then I'll have another son, and there you go. And then also I don't have to worry about what do I have to worry about? Oh, and this kind of goes back to the Target thing of not labeling toys boys or girls, and who cares? Like, honestly, if you labeled toys boys and girls, that would make it easier for me to find the toy I'm looking for. So if Muggsy wants a Tonka trunk, I'll just go to the boys section, because that's traditionally where the Tonka trunk boys are. So I don't know. I feel like the politically correctness has gone too far. I mean, why not just let us be adults and be parents on our own? I mean, we can honestly tell the temperature of the room. We can tell that it's not okay to beat your son if he's playing with dolls and likes to wear pink. And you don't stuff your daughter into a dress kicking and screaming when she wants to go to the middle school dance in slacks and a hoodie. I mean, that's her decision. I mean, why are you forcing things upon her? Now, I get that you're parents. We're parents. And you don't want, I feel like it's a spot where you're not their buddies. You're not just their mentors. You're their guardians. You're their caretakers, but you're also not their dictators. You know what I mean? Like, it's not whatever I say goes in this house with some things, like curfew, what you're eating in the house, chores, rules, stuff like that, how you act in school, the type of grades you get. I feel like that is all hardline stuff. But when it comes to interests, like, if the kid's really into rocket ships, you're not going to be like, hey, screw you, you're collecting baseball cards now. What? I don't want to. Why snuff the kid's interest in something that could either be a hobby for life that gives them a lot of pleasure and gives meaning to their life, or it could be a profession. Why are you snuffing that out? But I do think it's the parent's job to introduce the children to a number of interests that they may enjoy. And I don't think it's their job to specifically limit what the kid's being introduced to. But I also don't think that it's their job to be like, hey, son, playing football, and we're going hunting. And the kid's like, I don't like being hit, and I don't like being out in the cold at 5 a.m. It's going to make that kid miserable if you force them to do both. And once they get to the age where they start developing their preferences, I feel like you just kind of got to roll with it. As they're already developing and becoming the person they are. But still, eat your damn broccoli and be in the house by 9 p.m. when streetlights come on. Yeah, that's the rules that we can put out there. So I don't know what we accomplished today. It was kind of a free-form conversation about gender roles and tomboys versus tomgirls, etc. And Amazon. If you want to buy dresses for your boys or buy football jerseys and cut off denim shorts for your girls, buy them on Amazon. Go to dadmodepod.com. Top left corner, click through our Amazon banner. It'll take you there through a link. Bookmark that link. Every time you buy something from Amazon for your cross-dressing children, just kidding, do it through our bookmark, and we'll get a little taste, and it'll keep the Dad Mode podcast rolling forward, keep the lights on, and et cetera, et cetera. All right, we're out of here. Show's available on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at DadModePod, or me at Andy Carlson Show. Website, as always, dadmodepod.com. Be a man, be a father, go Dad Mode. I'll see you next time.
Think the episode you just heard is worth $1? Well, send it our way. Visit dadmodepod.com/support to find out how. Be a man, be a father. Go Dad Mode. The music is created and produced by deeB. To hear more of his tracks, visit soundcloud.com/deeB.